Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy.
This is the Bare Bones
podcast.
Are we ready? I feel like watching that episode of Grey's Anatomy kind of
Made me lazy.
No, I just want to take a nap.
I just want to eat snacks.
I mean, that's always.
We were talking about Chick-fil-A. Now I want Chick-fil-A from the last one.
Bitch, we were at Chick-fil-A earlier. I got a frosted coffee and a cookie, and she didn't want anything.
I wasn't that hungry, but now we talk about Chick-fil-A. It's all like that.
You know, Chick-fil-A is great too, because I hate gay people. For legal reasons, that's a joke.
All we say are freaking jokes and sarcastic comments, if you didn't know by now.
I don't have a personality, okay? I have memes and obscure movie references.
There we go.
You know why we're here, bitch?
Another episode, bitch.
Yeah, something like that.
Is it more doomsday stuff?
It's weird psychology stuff. Well, actually, no, not psychology, more sociology. But I think you'll like it because you're a big fan of psychology and how people interact. And that's what our topic today is all about.
Fun.
It's about implications of our society and what it can mean. So in the 1960s and 70s, overpopulation was a major concern for many Americans. The modern world began to see massive growth of industrialization and population centers. Many theories circled about how overpopulation was and would affect the world. Media, such as the movie Soylent Green, showed dystopian futures brought on by too many people with too little resources.
I mean, kind of like how it is now.
I don't know if it's so much like too little resources, because
There's just too many people, though.
the thing is, like, we could definitely feed everyone on Earth. It's just we have so much waste because we create so much surplus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
especially from restaurants.
go
There's
fucking
always so many.
listeners, go listen to go read fucking Ishmael. Like, it's what the book's all about. That our modern world, we have too many people, and we kind of abuse the world and think it's our thing, that we can do whatever we want. We're the rulers of the world, and really we're just fucking apes with a conscience.
I mean, we're more than that.
We lick buttholes. Actually, I know. I think I've seen monkeys lick buttholes in the zoo. You don't go look at chimpanzees, apparently. All right. Why do I bring this information up?
Butt-licking chimpanzees.
Overpopulation. Why do I bring this information up? Because I want to introduce you to a man known as Dr. John Calhoun. Dr. Calhoun was an American ethologist and behavior researcher. His main focus was studying the behavior of animals in the environment. He worked on the Rodent Ecology Project at Johns Hopkins University. In March 1947, he began a 28-month study of a colony of Norway rats in a 10,000 square foot outdoor pen. Even though 5 females over this time span could theoretically produce 5,000 healthy progeny for this size pen, Calhoun found that the population never exceeded 200 individuals and stabilized at 150. Moreover, the rats were not randomly scattered throughout the pen area, but had organized themselves into 12 or 13 local colonies of a dozen rats each. He noted that 12 rats is the maximum number that can live harmoniously in a natural group, beyond which stress and psychological effects function as group breakup forces. So his basic, that he notices is, okay, you can only have a certain amount of rats in an area living before it's just too much. Even if they have the resources and the space, they're just... There's
throws everything off balance.
Yeah, I think if you were to put it on a graph, instead of like a straight line, going up towards the corner, it's more like a hump.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a perfect number, and then after you pass that perfect number, things start to go bad. I don't know what like antisocial behavior and stress looks like for a mouse. Are the mice like stressed about the same stuff we are? Are they doing taxes? Mice girlfriend breaking up with you. You're
Is that what you're scared of
you
happening?
haven't paid your rent on your nest. All right, like you're drinking your mouse liquor, which is made up of fermented cheese. I guess. Well, no, cheese is already fermented. Mouse stress. Dr. Calhoun would move around a lot, but he would eventually work for Walter Reed Army Medical Center in the Division of Neuropsychiatry before gaining his position at the National Institute of Mental Health in 1954, where he would work for the next 33 years. Have you ever heard of National Institute of Mental Health? I'd never heard of it before I read this.
It kind of sounds familiar. Maybe I've read it in an article.
They
somewhere.
acronym it as the NIM, the NIMH.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've definitely read it in textbooks.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you're a psych minor, so I was curious if you
Yeah.
had heard of that. You maybe have heard mention of this experiment. When I reveal to you like what he dubs the condition, you maybe have heard of it.
Go on.
In the early 1960s, the National Institute of Mental Health acquired property in a rural area outside Poolesville, Maryland. The facility that was built on the property housed several research projects, including those headed by Calhoun. It was here that his most famous experiment was created. This is the mouse Utopia experiment. Dun dun! Mouse CSI.
Oh yeah.
Dun.
No, that's the
Wait.
SVU. That's
Is
Law
that?
and Order.
I was gonna say I thought that was NCIS. I don't know. Besides like Criminal Minds, I never really watched crime shows a whole lot.
NCIS is good.
I don't know, I always felt like they were so. I really liked dark stuff when I was a kid. Like I liked like supernatural type stuff. I wasn't as into like true crime.
People are scary.
You I feel like were the opposite. You were more into the actual true crime.
When I was a kid, I wasn't interested in true crime. I liked cartoons and Disney.
You've always been a fucked up human being. Come on, you're just like me. You're just like me. In July 1968, 4 pairs of mice were introduced into the habitat. The habitat was a 9-foot square metal pen with 4.5-foot high sides. Each side had 4 groups of 4 vertical wire mesh tunnels. The tunnels gave access to nesting boxes, food hoppers, and water dispensers. There was no shortage of food or water or nesting material. There were no predators. The only adversity was the limit on space. So basically, he's giving them a utopia.
They live in the good life.
Everything they could ever want. The only thing that would limit their growth is how much space they got, which I think I talk about later in the script. But he basically built it big enough to where they could hold like several thousand mice in there. And I can't remember why. I read somewhere he switched from rats to mice.
Well, rats are bigger.
But I would think rats would be better for an experiment like this because rats are like really, really smart.
I mean, mice are too.
Are they?
I'm guessing they are.
Like I actually know rats are smart and they can like solve puzzles and stuff. But like mice, they get eaten by hawks.
Rats get killed
Rats
by
are cute
snakes,
too.
too.
Yeah, rats are cute. The experiment would see different iterations over the next 2 decades. Each iteration was dubbed a universe. Example, Universe 1, Universe 2. Calhoun would take the iterations all the way until Universe 25, which was the most infamous one. It was the most, like, went on the longest, you know? While they were all similar in outcome, Universe 25 is typically the most cited in terms of effects. So when we discuss the experiment here and what happens, we will mostly be talking about Universe 25. However, it acts as simply a representation of all the universes. Universe 25 also saw a much larger and more complex enclosure introduced. In Universe 25, a population of mice would grow within a 2.7 square meter enclosure consisting of 4 pens, 256 living compartments, and 16 burrows that led to food and water supplies. With each iteration, 4 pairs of mice, 4 males and 4 females, would be initially introduced. During the first 104 days, a phase Calhoun dubbed the Strive period, the mice adjusted their new surroundings, marked their territory, and began nesting. This was followed by the Exploit period, which saw the population double every 55 days. By the 315th day, Universe 25 contains 620 mice. Each compartment could house up to 15 individuals. The overall enclosure was built for a capacity of 3,000. Despite the abundance of space throughout the enclosure, most mice were crowding selected areas and eating from the same food sources. The act of eating, as it turned out, came to be viewed as a communal activity, which caused most of the mice to favor the same few compartments. So, like, early on, the mice were already kind of acting strange because they were just, as we were saying, like, there was tons of areas they could have gone to, but they all congregated to the same areas because, you know, there's
Follow the crowd.
well, there's no stress in this environment. There's no predators, there's no plague, nothing. So, like, kind of, I guess you could call it, like, their entertainment was going to these feeding areas and seeing other mice. All of this huddling, however, led to a drop in mating, and the birth rate soon fell to a third of its former level. A social imbalance also took place among the mice. 1/3 emerged as socially dominant. The other 2/3 turned out less socially adept than their forebears. As bonding skills diminished among the mice, Universe 25 went into a slow but irreversible decline.
So, why would they stop breeding if they're all together?
So basically, imagine somebody said, "Oh, you want to mate? You need to go do it in public," because they were so huddled all the time and they weren't. It created, I guess, too much stress, and the mice just weren't able to mate as much because they were just too stressed out because they were basically taking the stress of survival out of their lives, made them get socially stressed, which basically caused their entire psychology to start getting fucked up. We'll go into it, but like things get really fucked up with this scenario. By day 315, behavior disparities between males of high and low status became more pronounced. Those at the bottom of the pecking order found themselves spurned from females and withdrew from mating altogether. Having no roles to fulfill within the society of mice, these outcast males wandered apart from the larger groups to eat and sleep alone. Sometimes, these males would go out of their way to fight among one another. The alpha males, by contrast, became more aggressive and pugnacious, often launching into violence with no clear provocation or motive. At times, these males would roam around and indiscriminately rape other mice regardless of gender. Meanwhile, the different group of males grew timid and inert, and often would wound up being the passive recipients of violence. In several instances, bloodbaths ended with a cannibalistic feast for the victors. It's basically like they're just kind of killing each other around, and it's like debauchery of blood and rape, because, like, again, these mice are just basically their entire normal existence is like turned on its head, and they don't really know what to do with each other. With male mice abandoning their traditional role in Universe 25, the females were left to fend for their nest. Consequently, many females adopted more aggressive forms of behavior, which would sometimes spill over into violence toward their young. Others would refrain from motherly duties altogether, banishing the unraised litters and withdrawing from further mating, resulting in serious consequences. In some compartments, the infant mortality rate topped 90%. I've heard of that before with like gerbils. That if your gerbil, like some people get horrified because they'll have a gerbil and it'll have babies, but if your gerbil gets too stressed, they eat the babies, which like I don't understand the reasoning behind that.
You're too stressful. I'm taking you out.
Like I don't know if that's stress relieving. I've never tried eating a baby to relieve stress.
I don't think that.
Usually, I just take, my medication for anxiety. I don't know.
At least you're not taking it out on me.
Not yet. Give me time. Give me time. By the 560th day, the population increase had ceased altogether as the mortality rate hovered at 100%. This marked the start of the death phase in which the rodent Utopia slid towards extinction. Amidst the violence, hostility, and lack of mating, a younger generation of mice reached maturity. Having never been exposed to examples of normal, healthy relationships with no concept of mating, parenting, or marking territory, this generation of mice spent all of their waking hours eating, drinking, and grooming themselves. In reference to their perfected, unruffled appearances, Calhoun called these mice the, quote, beautiful ones. Living in seclusion from the other mice, they were spared the violence and conflict that waged in the crowded areas, yet made no social contributions. So, Instagram influencers. No social contributions at all. In fact, a social nuisance, I would say. No comment, okay.
I mean, they don't really influencers. They don't do much.
Calhoun described the death phase as consisting of two stages. The first death, which was a metaphorical death of the spirit of the colony, this being shown by the advent of the beautiful ones and the decline of the colony's society. Following this was the second death, which was a much more literal death for the colony. And I'd read, I didn't find the passage, but I had read that the whole idea of first death and second death was actually something taken out of Book of Revelations. That's in the Bible, in case you were wondering.
I had no idea.
Crazy, I know. Extending on his observations of the beautiful ones, Calhoun later said that mice, just as humans, thrive on a sense of identity and purpose within the world at large. He argued experience such as tension, stress, anxiety, and the need to survive make it necessary to engage in society.
I mean, some stress is good.
Yeah, I think if you don't, it adds to like a work ethic, you know? And I think he's right about like you kind of need a purpose in your life. We'll go into more his, when I finish, we'll go into more his actual like conclusions from all of this. Because I think there are like interesting parallels to our own society, but at the same time, there's some issues with the conclusions. When all needs are accounted for and no conflict exists, the act of living is stripped to its barest physiological essentials of food and sleep. In Calhoun's view, that is the paradox of a life without work or conflict. When all sense of necessity is stripped from the life of an individual, life ceases to have purpose and the individual dies in spirit. Gradually, the mice that refused to mate or engage in society came to outnumber those that formed gangs, raped, and plundered, and fed off their own. The last known conception in Universe 25 occurred on day 920. At which point the population was capped at 2,200, well short of the enclosure's 3,000 capacity. An endless supply of food, water, and other resources were still there for the mice, but it didn't matter. The behavior sink had set in. That was actually what, I guess I forgot to put that in the script. That's what he dubbed it. This whole situation of the decline in society, he calls it the behavioral sink. I was just curious if you had ever heard that phrase.
Behavioral sink?
Yeah, it's this idea that it's basically like a decline in society, and like the population like loses its social behaviors, I guess.
I haven't heard of it.
The behavioral sink had set in, and there was no stopping Universe 25 from careening to its self-made demise. Soon enough, there was not a single living mouse left in the enclosure. Before the rodent Utopia imploded entirely, Calhoun removed some of the beautiful ones to see whether they would live more productive lives if released into a new society. Free of social strife and carnage, placing these mice in a fresh setting with few pre-existing residents, a scenario similar to that which greeted the initial pairs placed in Universe 25, he expected the beautiful ones to awake from their asocial haze and answer nature's call to populate the barren environment. However, the relocated mice showed no signs of change from their earlier behavioral patterns. Refusing to mate or even interact among their new peers, the reclusive mice eventually died of natural causes, and the fledgling society folded without a single new birth. So it's crazy. He took these mice that really, and it should be noted too, a lot of the beautiful ones, they were the children
Of the
who survived.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because remember, some of the babies were abandoned and stuff, or the mothers just kind of like lost their sense of like how to be a mouse mom, you know. And a lot of these beautiful ones were those children who were raised in this asocial environment. So from birth, they had no idea how to socialize as a mouse. And he thought, oh, well, if I put them into a better environment, maybe like their instinct will kick in and they'll know, but they didn't. They didn't change, and they ended up just dying.
Because stuff like that, it's learned behavior.
Yeah.
So have you never learned how to, like, I don't know, for humans, have you never learned how to cook or how to take care of yourself? You're not going to know how unless someone teaches you.
Oh, what was it? I was on Reddit one time, and somebody was talking about people, like, being unable to take care of themselves because they never really learned how. It was mostly about, like, men who basically, like, their wife cooked and cleaned and, like, took care of the house.
They don't know how to do anything.
When their wife dies, they don't know how to do any of that stuff. They've never... When they were young, their mother did it for them, and when they got older, their wife did it for them. And so, like, one guy was talking about he worked in a hospital, and they admitted this old man who literally got scurvy because his wife died, and he didn't know how to cook. So he just ate cookies nonstop, and he got scurvy because he just didn't know how to cook food or what nutrition really was, because he never had to do it. His wife did it for him. But yeah, I see what you're talking about, learned behavior.
Yeah. Because, you know, like, when you're a kid, there's a certain age where you start dressing yourself. Like, you kind of learn that from, like, how your parents used to dress. You know, you see them doing it, so then you start doing it.
Yeah, I guess.
Like, you know, they put on your shoes for you. You see them doing it, so then you do it. And then you learn how to put on a shoe.
Oh, hey, my transcript got completed. Cool. I was waiting for that to happen. Sorry, I guess I can sign up for classes now. Good news, everyone. All right. Back to the script. In Calhoun's view, the rise and fall of Universe 25 proved 5 basic points about mice as well as about human society. 1. The mouse is a simple creature. but it must develop the skills for courtship, child rearing, territorial defense, and personal role fulfillment on the domestic and communal front. If such skills fail to develop, the individual will neither reproduce nor find a productive role within society. So as young as a child, these mice need to learn basically like a skill. And he's kind of saying the same thing of humans. Like, if you raise a child and you never teach them like a useful skill or something, they just kind of lose their drive for life. 2. As with mice, all species will grow older and gradually die out. There is nothing to suggest human society isn't prone to the same developments that led to the demise of Universe 25. 3. If the number of qualified individuals exceeds the number of openings in society, chaos and alienation will be the inevitable outcomes. So he's saying, if there's if we're comparing it to human society, if there's not enough jobs, we have too many people but not enough jobs to fulfill. Which, people have been saying that about automation and stuff, and I know that debates come up when it comes to universal basic income. I don't know, I know you're not a fan of those kind of talks, universal basic income and stuff. The idea that
People,
you give everyone $1,000 flat rate,
It's a lot in grocery stores, most of it is self-checkout,
Uh-huh.
A lot of that's growing, so of course you have less people working. So it's how I don't know how to explain it. You have less people working because
how
of
do you
more
get
machines, so
if our population is continuously increasing but more jobs are becoming automated, what's the answer for the workforce? We'll talk about that at the end. 4. Individuals raised under the latter conditions will lack any relation to the real world. Physiological fulfillment will be their only drive in life. 5. Just as mice thrive on a set of complex behaviors, the concern for others developed in post-industrial human skills and understandings is vital demands continuance as a species. The loss of these attributes within a civilization could lead to its collapse. In 1972, Calhoun shared his observations from the results of the rodent Utopia in an essay that he titled Death Squared, the Explosive Growth and Demise of a Mouse Population. This work gained instant notoriety for its grim outlook on the consequences of an overpopulated and oversatiated society. By the 1970s, the world had several existential conflicts ensue. Vietnam, race riots, political assassinations, the Cold War, China's Cultural Revolution, which caused millions to starve. Given all the strife that had been impacting the world in the years immediately before, the public was fearful Calhoun's findings were indicative of mankind's current course. The examples of carnage and bloodshed in the wake of overcrowding seemed to mirror the social unrest of 60s and 70s human society, which coincided with unprecedented urban sprawl. I've actually heard that before with serial killers, that there was people theorizing back, because they were so prevalent in the 60s and 70s, there was people theorizing that, this is a sign of the decline of our society. Despite the grim parables presented in Calhoun's observations, he claimed he wasn't trying to imply mankind was headed down a similar path toward extinction. While he definitely saw parallels between the downfall of Universe 25 and some of society's ills, he stressed humans, as a more sophisticated species, had the wisdom and ingenuity to reverse such trends. However, in spite of this input from Dr. Calhoun, some in the modern world would like to use the behavioral sink as an argument against things such as welfare, LGBT rights, and economic equality. It was really amazing when I was researching this. This experiment and the idea of the behavioral sink, super conservative people love it, because they love to talk about how especially it was like, what was it, 2013, 2014, when gay marriage got legalized. There was people bringing it up, and they were like, look, like, you know, gay mice was a sign that the society was crumbling and stuff, and they're like, oh, it's abnormal, blah blah blah, and like it was just, you know, a science experiment that
People try to relate things to themselves.
people tried to spin. Same thing with economic equality, where people tried to bring up where discussions of, hey, there's a huge wage gap, and we have fucking billionaires, like 1% of the population holding, I think it's over 50% of all the wealth in the world, and people will bring it up and go, well, we have to have things be like that because there has to be a class structure, or else society will collapse. And no, it's horseshit. Yes, there are problems in society, but the problem is this experiment has gotten politicized in such a way that people want to use it as a talking point, even though that's not what the results were showing. Basically, Calhoun was saying, hey, like we're more complex than mice. Like,
yeah, we're not like freaking mice. Like,
yeah,
that's the thing. You have to.
You shouldn't draw a sudden your full argument from this experiment. Like, you could use it as a factor of like evidence, but I think if you just look at this experiment and go, well, you know, the mice weren't getting hunted by predators. If we're using logical reasoning, I could sit there and go, well, the mice didn't get hunted by predators, therefore if humans didn't get hunted by predators, we would end up like the mice. And like, dude, nobody's saying we should like loose tigers in Manhattan and let them hunt people down because
it's okay.
because
people
it'll
kill each other. It's
because
fine.
it'll make them better people. That's not what anybody's saying.
That's why we have people killing other people.
Yeah,
there you go.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's some people that they want to claim, oh, well, transgenders and gays, like the fact that we have more of them in our society, which we don't have more of them in our society. They've always been around. They're just more comfortable coming out now. But they'll point to, like, oh, because we have those people in our society, that proves that our society's on a downcline. We need to get rid of them. And that's how you make arguments for, like, gay conversion therapy and stuff. Do you want that Chick-fil-A now, huh? Do you like that gay conversion therapy?
I like chicken.
The Lord's chicken. Yeah, and same thing with welfare.
I'm not gonna stop buying Chick-fil-A just because of that. Like,
same thing with welfare. This was used as like a big argument against like UBI and welfare and stuff. And I'm not a fan. I'm not crazy about universal basic income. I think there's good arguments for it. I think there's bad arguments. Welfare, I get really annoyed by people arguing against that because there's a lot of information regarding welfare that gets really skewed. Like, one of the big things that people who are against it always talk about is like, oh, like, look at the situation of people abusing the system. And like, it's such a small fracture that have actually like abused the welfare system. Actually, statistically, most people who are using it like really need it. Like, they would be starving on the streets if they didn't have it. Do I think everybody should be getting a paycheck all the time? I don't fucking know. Okay? Like, I just get tired of people trying to politicize arguments, like taking science and going, look, this totally supports my idea, and like, no, like, you could use that as an angle, but things are more complex than that.
I mean, science are facts, so.
And hey, facts don't care about your feelings. Get fucked, Ben Shapiro. Alright, that's all I got. If you guys like what we do here, please support us. I don't know. We need more than just like 18 views,
Buy more
okay?
Chick-fil-A!
Don't support gay conversion therapy and, you know, super fundamentalist evangelical conservatives can get fucked. Alright, bye.